Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Kevin Kissinger, and with me is Stuart Zelnick. We're both teachers here at the LSAT Demon and tutors as well, but I just realized we both teach logical reasoning. What is your class about, Stuart?
Yeah, we have a nice little overlap of our logic and reasoning teachers here today. So I teach LR secret sauce, where we essentially are deconstructing every argument into its kind of constituent parts, and then talking about what's the evidence, what's the conclusion if there is one, and walking students through generally three questions, each one of various difficulty levels, to make sure that they understand what we're looking at, talking about the evidence, making sure that we're going through our process right instead of just blindly heading into the question.
Yeah, no, I love that, breaking it down, because that's what we got to do on the outside, is slow down and make sure we understand what we're reading. So I love that. And your class is on Sundays, right?
Yep, Sundays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and then usually I hang back a little bit after class to talk with students one-on-one if they have any questions about LR or the study process in general.
Hey, what a great way to spend your Sunday afternoon, in my opinion. So check that out. I also teach. I teach on Tuesdays, pretty late at night for those of you on the East Coast. But if you're on the West Coast and you're just got off work, then it's a great time to study a little bit of logical reasoning while you're chowing down your dinner. My class is called Guilty or Not Guilty. And similar to Stuart, our goal is to break down the passage, but we're trying to figure out, really trying to be aggressive and attack the passage to see if there's a problem going on in it. So good exercise for both classes. But our topic today is about getting ready for if you should take the exam, registering for it and whatnot. So if you're still on the fence about whether you'll register or not, we have a few things to consider when deciding if you're ready.
I guess a good place to start off, right, is talking about, like, are your scores, your score range, is that where you want it to be? Remember, we aren't judging our scores off of a single practice test. It's made up of a score range, and we generally say that that's made up of 5 or more practice tests. And these don't have to be, full length practice tests that you're sitting for, the hour plus going through them. Do time sections, one of each section, and then figure out from there what the score equates to. And once you've done all of those time sections and you can come up with 5 total LSAT scores, you'll have a pretty good idea of your test range and whether or not it's, kind of in the ballpark of where you want to be.
Yeah, and we don't want a hard limit or anything like that. Like
Yeah.
all the time you hear people say, "Oh, I just want a 170," and it's like, well, cool, that's a good goal, or 160 or 150 or whatever. But you should try to aim for a specific range so you can have a bit of flexibility, because the test is, treat the real thing like a practice test, but you just don't know exactly if you're going to perform the same way you do on a practice test. So if you're looking for that range, you can check out lsatdemon.com/scholarships, kind of plug in some numbers, do a little bit of math there, and it can kind of tell you what financial aid package you might receive from certain schools. So if you're like, oh, I want a 163 to 168, that's how you can figure that out and make sure that complies with whatever school you're trying to attend in the future.
Yeah, and I really want to hit upon the point that you said about how your range is kind of flexible, because as teachers, right, I think it's helpful for students to hear our own experiences. And
Yep.
for me personally, the score ended up somewhere towards the middle, or even slightly tilted a little bit towards the lower end of my range, which is totally fine because it still falls within my range, and it was still an acceptable score that worked for me, that I was comfortable with. And I think that anytime you can show up to test day and know that, like, even if you do score towards the low end of your range, that you're going to be comfortable with that score, it takes a lot of anxiety and a lot of pressure right out of test day, which is already, an incredibly stressful experience to begin with.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. But kind of adding on to that, when you're doing practice tests and you're doing time sections and stuff like that, that should be a really good indicator of how you're going to do on test day. So, I get this a lot as a teacher. It's like, oh, I've done a lot of stuff untimed. And I was like, well, wait a second. I understand drilling and, doing questions on your own to build up the knowledge and practice and whatnot. But at some point, you got to do some time sections, whether you have accommodated time or not, because how are you supposed to get an accurate reflection of how you will perform on test day? So keep that in mind. got to treat that the practice as the real thing. But another thing, and I kind of touched on this earlier with a different hard limit with score, but there's also a hard limit with time. You don't want to set a hard limit with time, right, Stuart?
Yeah. Yeah. You wanna just you wanna get your practice in, be comfortable under the time where you are, understanding like how long it's taking you to do each section. But also understanding that like, you have multiple attempts at taking the LSAT, and, panicking or having something crazy happen on a test is sometimes might happen, but generally speaking, you shouldn't be stressing yourself out that much about time. A lot of students, right, think that if they don't finish the test within like the section within like the 35 minutes they're allotted, that like that's no good. But really, we care about your accuracy on the ones that you're attempting, because you only get points for the ones that you get correct. So it's much more valuable for you to be focusing on slowing down and getting those ones correct. And even if you don't finish all of them, right, guess on the rest, and hope that you get lucky, but really focus on making sure that you're getting the ones that you attempt correct.
Yes. Yep. Getting them right will allow speed to follow on its own. You don't even have to try to work for it because it will just happen.
Yep.
But another kind of time, we should also consider when we're registering or thinking about registering for the LSAT is setting a hard deadline. If you're planning to apply in, let's say, next fall, this would be fall of 2023, hoping for admission starting in 2024, don't set the hard limit. Okay, I'm going to take the August LSAT. That's going to set you up for potentially some huge disappointment, because a lot of students, they'll set August as their deadline, they don't get the score they want, and boom, suddenly the cycle's upon them, and there's nothing they can really do about it. It's kind of, you're behind, you're losing the game already.
Yeah, I think a good way of thinking about it, right, is that your score range should dictate when you're taking the test,
Exactly.
rather than when you're taking the test dictating like your score range. That feels backwards to me. So if you have a score range that you're comfortable with and you feel ready for it, by all means register for the test and take it. Otherwise, if you're still not quite within that score range, don't worry about looking out long term and being like, I got to take the test by X month, right? Law schools are going to be around. They can wait. If you have to take I took a gap year, if you have to take an extra year off to really focus on your studies, do that by all means. It pays off long term. You've got the opportunity to go to better schools, you get more money, you don't go into debt, all of things which, we want you to do. We want you to have a debt-free law school experience.
Yeah. And that's a good point you made. It's, we want to go to law school, obviously, but we don't want to make it seem like we're begging for law schools. We want law schools to beg for us. So at that point, get your highest score, then apply to law school. Think about it that way. And then likewise, if you register, let's say you register for this test and you realize 2 weeks before you're like, oh shoot, I am not ready. I'm really struggling, or I got really sick, or, oh, I forgot about my great aunt's wedding that's supposed to happen this weekend. My bad. I need to reschedule. Withdrawing is better than actually using one of those attempts. Do you have any experience with that, Stuart, directly with something like that?
Yeah. The personal anecdote of getting sick, really hits close to home. Having gotten sick, I was comfortable within my score range when I was getting ready to take an August LSAT. And just before that August LSAT, I got super sick and, tried to kind of practice test through it, but I found that I really couldn't focus and I knew that I wouldn't perform my best. So I decided to withdraw from the August LSAT and instead register for the September one. And my advice to anyone dealing with any kind of similar situation is call them. Talk to a LSAC representative on the phone. The nice woman from LSAC that I spoke with was incredibly helpful and incredibly sympathetic to my situation, and probably bent some things around that otherwise I might not have had the opportunity to register for September. And she also moved my registration without having to do any crazy charges, which is really nice because it's super unexpected that you get sick or have something crazy come up. And it's nice to be reminded that like at the end of the day, right, talking to another human being and explaining your situation is probably going to get you a little bit farther than it would online.
I agree. Yeah. And that's good advice too. I didn't know about calling. I had to reschedule my test once, and I just did it online, but I was short $200 for that. So calling and saving money, that's great. But again, there's nothing wrong with taking the LSAT later. It's always going to be there. You have time to do it. Just don't waste one of your attempts.
Yeah, most students, I think most students only get 5 attempts.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, there are, some exceptions that can be made, and we do hear students who end up having more than 5 attempts due to those exceptions. But I would say, generally speaking, most students only have those 5 attempts available. And if view your kind of studying as growth oriented, that when you take an LSAT and maybe you think, oh wow, I can do a lot better, then maybe you need those extra attempts to kind of help make sure that you get your best score. Takes a lot of the pressure off, right? If you know you can take it again, rather than being like, oh no, this is the last time I'm going to be able to take it. I need to score my highest. That puts you in a real bad pressure scenario.
Yeah. And, speaking of registering and pressure, Ben and Nathan often encourage this in class. When I was a student, the Demon, they said this. So this advice has been around for a while. But when you hit that range, you're feeling good, you're ready to take the test, register for 2. Do 2 in a row. So then, register for the April test. And I think there is a May test. So you can register for both. And then if things go south, oh no, I have a backup plan. No big deal. But if you do really well, great, you're short $200. That's not, nobody likes to be short $200, but you got the high score, and that security blanket can go away. No harm, no foul. So
yeah, always nice to have like an escape plan, a plan B.
Yes, yeah, plan B. Yeah, that's all I have for this episode. Again, registering for the test, is something you need to take a bit of time and consider for yourself. How am I doing in my practice range? Am I actually feeling ready to go? If not, that's okay. I can kick the can down the road and get back to it later. But I don't have anything else. Do you have anything, Stuart?
No, nothing else from me.
Perfect. Well, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can email daily at lsatdemon.com. You can also share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.